Hello, hello, hello. This is Peter trying to record this video for like the fourth time already. Let's look at this animation here. Okay, the character, you pretty much know how I did it already. The only difference is that I used this asset I found online. I just made sure to change the textures and the shape a little bit so it fits the colors that I was looking for. But yeah, it's just still subdivision modeling and just rigging with AutoRig. What I wanted to focus on this video though was the clothes. How did I make these clothes move like this? It took me a second, a long second, so I wanted to show you guys so you could have it quickly and fast and perfect. First of all, we grab our body, which is the thing that our clothes are going to collide with, and we activate collision here in the physics tab. You make sure that it's here in your modifiers. Physics tab, you go down into the soft body and cloth, and make sure that your inner and outer thickness are at its minimum, because this way the gap between our clothes and between our character are going to be minimal, so it will look more realistic. As you can see, there is a gap there, which is not ideal, but once you turn on the solidify and the subdivision, it doesn't look as bad. You can barely tell it's there. Now that you have that collision in your body, we go onto our clothes. We make sure that we are in the physics tab and click the cloth modifier, and once you have it here, in my case I have my cloth modifier after 2 levels of subdivision because my base mesh is pretty low poly. So I have my cloth after my 2 levels of subdivision. Only after my cloth modifier is when I have solidify and another layer of subdivision, because if you solidify before your cloth simulation, you are going to have a hard time doing this. So now that you have your modifier in the body, now that you have your modifier in the clothes, everything located where it should be, you go onto your physics tab and we start playing with our cloth. You make sure, first of all, that your quality steps are a little higher than the default version, because 5 quality steps is kind of low, I have to admit. But with 8, you should be fine. I did 8. If you went more or less, go ahead. You choose a preset. In my case, I was doing sportswear because he's a basketball player, but I used the silk preset and it worked beautiful. Why? Because most cloths look like something like this. Even though there might not be exactly cotton, denim, leather, rubber, or silk, they look like it. In my case, sportswear is very, very thin, very, very light in weight. So silk is very similar and it worked very nicely. We go down, we go down, we go down, where you see cache and baking later, but we go into collisions. We up our collisions quality a little bit if you can handle it. I would actually dare say that the collision quality is more important than the actual quality steps. So if you have to sacrifice and only put up one quality, is the collision quality. Object collision distance at its minimum. So the same gap we talked about before between the body and the cloth are minimum. Turn on self collision distance, put it to a minimum once again so it looks realistic. We go next onto the shape. You make sure that you go into white paint, you create a new vertex group, you call it pen, you hit this plus button, call it pen, and you paint. Now, make sure your weight is not at 1, because if it never moves, it's weird. So have your weight at like 0.8 or something like that, and paint the places you don't want your clothes to move. In my case, I didn't want it to move here at the top of my shorts and at the top of the shirt. So I drew it, I painted on it, and then I blurred it so the transition was a little smoother. That will allow you to go into your physics tab, and in the shape, you are able to pin group. You put the vertex groups that you created before. I gave it 2 points in stiffness because I thought it was flowing a little too much before, but it's okay. You really don't have to do that. Now that you have all of your settings in your collisions, you have all of your settings in your cloth, you need to prepare this for baking. You need to prepare this for actual simulation. Now, you are going to have your rig, of course. As you can see, all of my actions are keyframed. This is necessary, and you do it by pose mode, selecting it all, pose, animation, bake, action, and you make sure you bake from before you're going to start your render. In my case, I did 1 second before I actually start my render. As you can tell, my render starts at frame 30, and I baked my animations since frame 0, and then I deleted the first half. Why do we have to bake this? And why do we have to leave that gap? Because once you go into your cloth and go down until the cache section where you're gonna bake, you're gonna see that the simulation, you should start it 1 second. I do 1 second, you can do more if you want. 1 second before it actually starts. And that is the same second, 0 to 30 in this case, where the clothes are actually grab onto the body and grab onto their shape and movement. That is why you need to create this other keyframe where your rig goes from rest pose to the actual animation, because this is when the clothes are going to adapt to it in this process, in this movement. They adapt to the animation, they adapt to the body, they do a little bit of motion, so they start to move right and perfect. And after one cycle, after 1 second, how long you made it for, you can actually start your render. In my case, frame 30, and baking the pre-render in 1 second from 0 to 30. That's when you go into your claw, you go into your cache, you make sure you simulate from 0 to the end of your animation, and you click bake. It will take a second, but it will work. Now, that might as well be all the explanation, but when I did this, I realized that my character, I felt like it looked too thin, like it lacked like a little volume. Because here, you can see it looks cartoonish, it looks fun, but once it starts moving, like the clothes are a little too tight to his body. Like I would like a little more movement. So I did another bake where I created this wind force field. I don't think it's used as much, so let me teach you. You just go Shift A, force field, wind. You point it to wherever you want your wind to come from. If I did it perfectly from the side, it was looking too weird, and if it did it perfectly from the front, it wouldn't even make sense. It wouldn't give the volume I was looking for sideways. So I did it at an angle, and what I learned is that you actually need to have your strength so high. I don't know how many renders I did where my strength was too low, because I was like, there's no way I need 10,000 strength. But yeah, it's actually very subtle right now. You can do it at 50,000 strength, and maybe you'll get to see something a little more. But yeah, have your strength very, very high. Noise amount, I can't even tell if that noise amount is there, because I cannot look at my clothes real time because they have a lot of polys. But I have it there in case it adds a little something. And once you have your wind, you can just go into your clothes and bake again. You don't need to turn on anything else. You don't need to do anything weird. It will work automatically. And you get your cloth animation. Beautiful, magical, and awesome. That is how I did mine. And hopefully that's how you can do yours too. If you make something cool using this tutorial, please show me. It's always very cool to see what I inspired. And if you want to look at more videos, if you want to watch more videos, then subscribe and like this video for supporting. I really appreciate every type of support. If you need anything 3D, hit me up. If you want to learn how I did something else in this file, like maybe the basketball, like maybe the lighting, like whatever you want, just let me know and I'll teach it to you. Look at my portfolio on Instagram, on ArtStation. And that is it for today. Bye!